My name's James Whitmore Jr. I'm here talking about the Players because apparently, according to family mythology, the little spark that became my existence in this planet started back in what is now the wardrobe shack behind the theater in Peterborough. My mom and dad met in 1947, just after the war, and my dad was trying to start his career as an actor. My mom was a public relations lady who worked at the theater, and she was also acting in some of the plays. They met, they fell in love, and they got married over in Dublin. And apparently, their interactions created this dilemma that has been my life. Anyway, I look forward to reading this stuff with you guys and my daughter, Aliah, and I can't wait to get started.
Thanks, Dad. My name's Aliah Whitmore, and I am third generation Whitmore stock at the Peterborough Players Theater. And my introduction to the theater was far later, was 2005, was the first year that my father, Jim, joined my grandfather, Jim, in a production of Inherit the Wind. And so I was allowed to come as a very periphery person, just assisting them and kind of rehearsing with them. And but it was my introduction to the theater. And I'll never forget the first performance of Inherit the Wind that I watched in the theater. And I sat very far back in the seats. And it was just this really intense feeling of magic. It really, really was. And I remember so clearly, it began to rain during the performance, and I could hear the rain on the roof of the theater, and I'm watching this performance on stage of my father and my grandfather, and it really felt like it's almost indescribable, but it was a definite, like, it felt enchanted. And it was really powerful to me. And this theater has been really meaningful to me since I've had the privilege in my adult life to become acquainted with it and acquainted with the company and Gus Kekkonen and Craig and the amazing panoply of actors that come through there. And it was also an opportunity for me to really get to see my grandfather working in a place that was so meaningful to him. And then to get to see my father and my grandfather work together on a stage that was so pivotal for their lives. And then finally last year, 2019, I was given an opportunity to act in a production of MAHIDA'S Extra Key to Heaven. And it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. So to put it succinctly, the Peterborough Players Theater has been so critical in my life as a creative, but also in my life as a human being. So we're going to be reading A New Century. This time, like all times, is a very good one, if we but know what to do with it. Ralph Waldo Emerson.
The Players roared into the millennium with a blockbuster lineup of plays and players. For the first time, 6 plays were featured for the equity season instead of the traditional 5. And they represented an eclectic mix worthy of the Players' long-standing reputation for serving up diverse and non-traditional summer stock fare. For its sheer theatrical energy and musical sizzle, Pump Boys and Dinettes was the highlight of the season, and it drew large audiences during its run. This 1982 hybrid musical revue, originally conceived and written by 6 actors and musicians, is a snapshot of the lives of men and women who toil in the service stations and diners along Highway 57 in North Carolina, somewhere between the towns of Frog Level and Smyrna. Janet Tift directed the show, with Todd Allman providing musical direction and Craig Schwartz handling the choreography. Charles Hall, Kevin Fox, Ann Harvey, Todd Allman, Kathy Manfree, and the second company member, Paul Coffey, provided the breakneck stage action and performed a wonderfully diverse set of musical numbers, a mixture of country, rhythm and blues, gospel, and rock and roll. The transcript review gave accolades for the performance and the entire cast, noting that whether they're singing a cappella or working with a wide variety of instruments, the 6 performers blend in vocal and physical harmony to deliver the upbeat message.
Despite the success of Pump Boys, it was eclipsed in popularity by Thornton Wilder's classic, Our Town. The always strong affection for this play was brought to a fever pitch by the announcement that James Whitmore would play the stage manager in the production and that Mary Beth Hurt would appear as Mrs. Webb. The Peterborough region was buzzing with the talk of celebrity sightings and anticipation of the show for weeks prior to its debut in August. The performance lived up to all expectations, with a solid group of veteran company members and local talent joining Whitmore and Hurt on stage, including Savon Martin, Baxter Harris, Jay Howdeshell, Craig Schwartz, Sarah Barnett, 10-year-old Sam Schrader, Michael Page, Ann Harvey, Rob Koch, Todd Amon, and Ken Sheldon. Transcript critic Jill Lawler was deeply impressed with Whitmore's performance, writing, "From the moment he begins to lay out the imaginary town of Grover's Corners, James Whitmore thoroughly wins over the audience. With a sly wink or a simple shrug of his shaggy eyebrows, he takes us into his confidence and shares with us the eternal virtues that make Wilder's play a much-loved American classic." The production was a sellout or near sellout for all the shows, providing a solid box office return and demonstrating once again the magical and timeless appeal of this play.
Year 2001, Craig Schwartz starred in the one-person show Fully Committed, which led off the season. Since his Peterborough in 1996, patrons had delighted in the wide range of characterizations, but never before had all his chameleon-like talents been displayed in a single production. The transcript review labeled it a one-man tour de force. Brilliantly and single-handedly brings to life an enormous cast of characters who typify the New York social scene. The review also praised the frenetic pace with which Gus Kekkonen directed the action and the meticulously designed basement setting Lee Dunholter created for the production.
As You Like It was a marked contrast. Gus directed a huge cast in an ambitious production of one of Shakespeare's more philosophical comedies. Although the entire cast was credited with a uniformly solid performance, special mention was made in a newspaper review of the outrageous foppishness of Justin Martindale, whose LeBeau is over the top, the wonderful voice of David Ray, and the earnest energy of the Players' marketing director, John Egging, who brings credible passion to his rendition of the love-smitten shepherd, Silvius.
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf was critically acclaimed, but the disturbing nature of Edward Albee's award-winning play may have limited its attendance. Jane Hodeshell, Michael Page, and real-life newlyweds Ian Merrill Peaks and Karen Elizabeth Peaks comprised the cast for this production. After watching the company preview instead of usual dress rehearsal, I was also well aware of the play's reputation for chasing off theatergoers and tried to dispel the aversion in her review. If the play is emotionally draining for the audience, it will also stretch us and take us to places where, while we may be uncomfortable, we may also learn something about the world and ourselves.
In 2001, another anonymous gift was made to the theater specifically for the purchase of the adjoining 80-acre plot of land that was coveted by local developers. This generous donation preserved the rural land abutting the primary theater grounds and added a highly valued asset to the theater's ownership. Another major improvement project during this time frame was the stage floor renovations. After the close of the 2001 season, the stage was built up to increase its height above the house floor, and at the same time, the surface was leveled in preparation for a new revolving set mechanism to be installed. The Players were busy with improvements to the theater's physical space and capabilities. The house risers had been rebuilt in 1996, and a new riser level added for rows D through F to improve sight lines for those seats. New seats were also acquired from the defunct Playwrights Horizon Theater in New York. In 2001, trustee Rob Koch and several staff members rented a U-Haul and drove it to the city to bring the seats back to Peterborough for installation in the barn for the following season.
An anonymous and magnanimous gift of $300,000 to the Players sparked several more projects. The Players were able to construct a greatly appreciated addition to the offices in 1998, expanding available space for the staff on the ground floor and creating new attic storage space. The women's restroom was expanded and refurbished in 1999, an even more pressing need than the office space based on the long queues that were always formed during intermissions.
The new revolving stage was in place in time for the 2002 season, and Gus Kekkonen made good use of it for the production of The Cherry Orchard. As well as several other shows that year. Chekhov's masterpiece requires a huge cast of characters, and Gus had to call into service nearly every member of both the equity company and the second company.
Transcript critic Jill Lawler was suitably impressed with the overall production, but she believed the most successful performances actually came from two of the minor characters. Pat Carpin as Charlotte, the governess who has lost her job, takes control of the stage at more than one point, Lawler noted. Her sleight of hand tricks and ventriloquist bits are entertaining and polished. Richard Thompson is likable and sympathetic as the former serf Furs, who has stayed on the estate since his liberation because he simply does not know what else to do. He adds both humor and pathos, and at the end he provides a stirring symbol for the peaceful passing of the old order. Left behind and forgotten, he curls up in the nursery of the estate as we hear the axes off stage raising the past and making way for the inevitable change in the present.
In the fall of 2001, Players actor and musician Todd Almond had assembled a small group of singers and instrumentalists to present an evening of his original music in New York City. Gus Kekkonen was in the audience and heard in several of those numbers the voices of two characters who seemed to be speaking to and about each other, and who, according to Gus, wanted to be in a musical. He proposed to Almond that they collaborate on an effort to develop a play. Creative vision became finished production in less than a year, and People Like Us had its world premiere at the Players during the 2002 season.
Play consists of 16 songs, strung together by monologues and dialogues, describing the evolving relationship between two former high school lovers who meet again by chance as adults in New York City on New Year's Eve. Both having fled from disastrous dates in the course of the evening, the audience follows them over the next several months as they struggle with issues of commitment, jealousy, identity, and independence. Todd Almond's offstage presence was felt throughout the show. According to Lawler, his piano itself becomes a third important character, conveying powerfully the wild range of emotions which Matt and Pam experience. The production was the first world premiere since 1986 and represented a successful renewal of the Players' venerable tradition for showcasing new works.
The Players dominated the first annual New Hampshire Theater Awards for that year, winning in 9 of 14 categories in the professional competition, including Best Drama for The Cherry Orchard and Best Musical, as well as Best Original Play for People Like Us.
Now we're down to the year 2003. The 2003 season marked the return of James Whitmore to Stearns Farm. You know, maybe we ought to stop for a minute, Oz, and just talk about the old man for a minute. You know, my dad was, as everyone knows, an extremely successful, very gifted actor, artist. He loved performing. He loved the craft of acting. As I said earlier, you know, he started in right after the war, World War II, went from being a pre-law graduate of Yale University to going to the South Pacific as a Marine and coming back and deciding he wanted to be an actor. Went to New York City and got involved with the American Theater Wing, and that's from which he just happened to get cast in a part in a Broadway show. The old man loved the theater. He loved the theater. He made his living in the movies. He made his living in television. He made his living as a film actor, like a lot of actors do. But he constantly and always returned to the theater. When he finally hooked up with Gus and Craig and those guys in the late, I guess the early 2000s, he found a home. He found a home that he lived in his heart till the day he died in 2009. He loved Peterborough for a lot of reasons. I mean, one was that's where his life started with my mom and his family and his life there, but also as an actor. Because he was in Peterborough when he got cast in a Broadway show, you know, and his career got into high gear. Peterborough Players was home to my dad. He loved that place, you know, and maybe later on, Ollie, I'll tell you about the journey her brother and her made after my dad died with his ashes across the country. But anyway, here we go. The 2003 season marked the return of James Whitmore to Stearns Farm after an absence of 2 years. His appearance as the wild old patriarch Martin Vanderhoff in the 3-week run of You Can't Take It With You helped make it a huge hit and the most popular play of the summer. As in the 2000 Our Town, he was surrounded by a solid cast, including Savon Martin, Craig Schwartz, Dale Hodges, Michael Page, Lisa Bosner, a bit of a repertory company right there, I'll tell you. Ecstatic reviews also spotlighted newcomer Sharon Spellman as a hilariously drunken actress, Frank Aronson as the Russian ballet instructor, and Jim Azulvandre as the inscrutable Mr. Depina. Later in the season, Whitmore personally bestowed the award named for him for best performance by a second company member on Will Ryan Fraser, who played the romantic lead in the Kaufman and Hart comedy. A very different night of entertainment rivaled You Can't Take It With You for bragging rights to the best production of the 2003 season. Always Patsy Cline, which is based on a true story, tells of a Texan named Louise Sager and her friendship with the country music star. Though a chance meeting before a 1961 show in Houston, the two women became fast friends and shared their joys and sorrows throughout the 2-year period prior to the legend's death in an airplane crash. Anne Harvey starred as Patsy Cline and was joined on stage by Sharon Spellman as Louise Segar. Critic Jill Waller thoroughly enjoyed the show, as did large audiences. Anne Harvey has returned with her amazing set of lungs to help bring the incarnation of Patsy Cline to Stearns Farm. With an uncanny physical and vocal resemblance to the pop icon and 2 music-backed hours, Harvey delivers wonderful renditions of 27 different Cline signature hits. Together, Harvey and Spellman are incredibly entertaining. Their enthusiasm for their roles was infectious. They had the audience clapping and singing and even dancing at the dress rehearsal. The capable hand of director Janet Tift helped bring all the key elements together to create a slick performance. The wonderful wooden-walled sets of Lee Dunholter, the costumes of Jane Stein, and the effective lighting design of Michael Kimmel and Lisa Weinschruck was a popular production with which to bring the curtain down on another successful season. The players picked up another 5 New Hampshire Theater Association awards, all of them for You Can't Take It With You. Best Drama, Best Director for Gus Kekkonen, Best Supporting Actress for Dale Hodges, Best Actress for Savon Martin, and Best Actor for James Whitmore.
2004, Gus brought back Craig Schwartz's One Man, Fully Committed, to open the next season, followed by James Whitmore and Carmen Decker in About Time. I still vividly remember going to the company run for About Time and just being so completely flabbergasted. I think it was later on. I don't know that it was this production, but I remember going to a company run because I think they did it more than once. I remember seeing Carmen Decker, and it was the first time that I'd ever seen her on stage. And her voice made such an imprint on my brain. She had a voice that it just like, it was like an instrument. Her speaking voice could kind of cut through anything. And the dynamic between the two of them was so hilarious and like, and I have to say, like, perverse and real. And there was just something so crackly and visceral about the two of them in that production together. I'll never forget it. And
yeah, you know, that originally did this show with Audra. The original productions were done out here in California.
With Grandma
I can't
Audra?
remember the playwright's name. Tom, I can't remember the last name, but they did the original production out here with when Dad and Audra were hooking up together.
Wow.
Anyway.
Wow. That must have been pretty, a pretty, second production with a lot of emotional content underneath the surface. Anyway.
Fecund.
Yes. Carmen Decker in About Time. But Chuck Morrie's Laughingstock was the funniest and most meaningful production of 2004. The play represented the former artistic director's comic dramatization of 25 years spent at Stearns Farm. It was also a celebration of all the stock companies past and present who struggle with the chronic lack of resources and the endless stream of obstacles, trying, as Chuck wrote, to give yourself over wholly to the making of plays, to telling stories in the dark on a summer night, and along the way, make a little family as well for a few months. First performed at the Pioneer Theater in Utah, where Chuck was artistic director, he dedicated the play to the memory of Sally Stearns Brown.
Wow. Chuck directed the Players production where he and his cast took the audience through a fictional 67th season at the Playhouse barn. Seth Chatfield, art critic for the transcript, wrote an inimitable description of what followed on stage. An unholy and mismatched ensemble, led by director Gordon Page, played with much nuance by Jim Jansen, comes together to accomplish a daunting goal: to pull off a repertory production of Hamlet. The fictional company starts out rehearsing King Lear, only to be informed by a wealthy benefactor halfway through that any other Shakespeare would be preferable. Charlie's Aunt and Dracula. Page must deal with two off-turning aging actors, a semi-recovered alcoholic ex-wife, a narcissistic leading man, a bitter veteran actor, a flamboyant and perpetually annoyed set designer, a ditzy leading lady, three clueless stage hands, and the skull of the theater's former owner in his attempt to make anything of the season. Wow, sounds like quite a show.
Confusion, madness, and farcical fun ensue as a band of misfits, each a brilliant stereotype of a particular brand of theater person, struggle to remember which play is which while battling a cash flow that's not flowing, the demands of a flaky director hired via nepotism, and the obsessive compulsive demands of a neurotic office manager played with delicious deadpan wit by Player's artistic director Gus Kekkonen. A treat for stage vets or aficionados, and a great comedic introduction to the reality behind the curtain of those new to theater. Laughingstock is a delight and a deliciously different theater experience.
The production was a special treat for local audiences with its direct lineage to Stern's farm. And with so many of them privy to the trials and tribulations encountered by the staff and company of the Players over the years, many of the patrons may even have witnessed the disastrous performance of MORRIE's adaptation of Dracula in 1974 that inspired Laughingstock's comic climax. The season's final production, The Glass Menagerie, also marked an expansion of the student matinee program initiated by Gus and Keith. Originally targeted at younger students, special performances of Menagerie on Friday mornings drew large numbers of teenagers and their teachers from local high schools. That season, the New Hampshire Theater Association gave 6 out of 7 of its awards in the non-musical categories to the Players. Best Drama, Best Director, Best Actor Whitmore, again, for About Time, and Best Original Play, plus 2 acting awards for Laughingstock.